Hello, everyone. My name is Karen McDermott, and I'm an author, publisher, and a speaker. And I am here to talk to you today about telling your story. And thank you so much to Mairead and the involved team for inviting me along. This is something I'm very passionate about. This is something that changed my life when I discovered it, because sharing our story with others, but also writing it for ourselves, is one of the most powerful things we will ever do in our life. It's so much so that it is my absolute mission in life to have stories get told. So that is why I really value coming here and for you to watch this video, because if it ignites something within you, then that's a wonderful thing. So I hope that the next 15 minutes that something will resonate. And that's a thing about these videos that you watch and people that you watch. You need to just take what resonates with you, what really just ignites something within you, and use that and do something with it. The rest is surplus. Okay? So if something ignites you today, please take action on it. Please have the courage to do that. And then you will see something amazing happen in your life. Okay? Trust it. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I've done and what I do. And also then I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share with you a little workbook I put together, a few pages of it, and that will be available as a download along with this video that you can use at home. So as I said, I'm an author. So I'm an author of over 40 books. I started writing in 2010. So, quite new. I haven't been writing all of my life. In fact, English was not one of my favorite subjects in school. So in order to tell your story, you don't need an English degree. You don't need to be a literary novelist. You just need an open heart and a passion and a drive and a calling to share your story. And that is, I absolutely 100% believe that everyone has a story to tell. In fact, I know it. I 100% know that everyone has a story to tell. And I think that's a big block with a lot of people. They think, well, I haven't had that interesting of a life. No, nobody can tell your story other than you. You are the only person who has been through your trial and tribulations in life, who has been through your wins and achievements from your perspective. So you are the only one that can share them. So please know that there's a lot of value in that. Okay. And I think once you realize that, it sets a thing in motion, a ball in motion that turns into something absolutely beautiful. Okay. So with my 40 books that I've published already, there's some non-fiction, some fiction, some children's books, some journals. I just love books. Books and babies are my life. I'm a blessed mum of 6 children as well. So when I wrote my story into a fictional novel in 2010, I did not know that what I was doing was going to change my life and lead me into publishing. In publishing, and I'll share that story with you in a few moments, and then in publishing, I've helped over 400 stories get told. I have some amazing authors on my books, but I also like to be there for people at the beginning when you first discover the power of writing, of telling your story, and should you choose to make it something that you want to turn into a book. Because remember, it's not always about turning something into a book or publishing an article. It's not always about that. Actual act of writing and telling your story in itself is one of the most therapeutic things you'll ever do for yourself and your own self-development journey. How do I know? Because I've done it. I first started out writing little short articles for a very small community called Building Beautiful Bonds. And I was their organic writer. I was going through a bit of a awakening process, I suppose you could call it at the time. It was 2009, I would say, about a year before I wrote my novel. And I had no intentions of writing a novel. That's a whole different story. But I used to write just little pieces, and it used to be like I could not write those now because I'm not in that season of my life now. They were written as I was realizing things. And so there was so much power in them. So please know that if you're going through something, if you write poems or if you write short little pieces about it or journal, that's very powerful. There's a lot of power in those words because you're feeling it right there. You've got the perspective of being right in it, in the storm, so to speak, or in the, whatever journey it is. And that's what telling your story is about. You're reflecting back on a journey, and a journey is something to be absolutely honored. And nobody else can see your journey or experience your journey, only you. And I know I keep emphasizing that, but it's so important that you understand that you are the main the driver of this train. So why tell your story? Right? There's a number of reasons why. Now you can do it in an article. You could do it, as a short piece that can be shared around. You can do it by journaling in a journal. You can do it in a self-help book, or you can do it in a memoir. Okay. So I'm just going to break those things down for you so that you understand the different types of components. So writing articles for, if you want to pitch to media, I always say around 750 words is the ideal length of an article. Usually 500 to 750. But if you are pitching to a certain media, just check out their guidelines. Writing articles are to be written with, yes, being personable, but to be backed up with some facts or some evidence. So always make sure that if you're writing an article, yes, open it up, but have a introduction, a middle, and a conclusion so that you tie it up, okay? And know your target audience and talk to them. And that's what I mean is talk to them through words. That's what telling your story is talking to someone through words. So it's always it always helps you with the words flowing. If you think of your friend and you just open up and talk to your friend, okay? That's what or someone who, even yourself 5 years ago, talk to them and tell them the story they needed to hear then. And that's quite often what telling your story is about. Just kind of identifying what it is that your reader needs to read. And that quite often is yourself 5 years previous or whatever. Okay? That book that you needed to read? That is often the books that are first time books, is the author has written the book they needed to read because they couldn't find it. Going into self-help books, I always say, get the framework of your book down. Know the theme, know the essence of your book, and then get the framework down. And start with about 20 chapters. And if you're going to have sub-chapters, then wonderful. But just have the framework of your book down, because when you have the framework down, the content just falls into place. And it's so much easier. So a self-help book, I keep it simple. Have the framework, then fill it in. It can be a book that can usually be jumped into or whatever, by the reader. But if you're writing your full story, your memoir, when you're writing that process, it's important to do a timeline. Quite often people have sheets on their floor, loads of A4 sheets, all in a big line, and they do a timeline from their earliest memory until now, and start putting in key points on their journey. It's a really fascinating thing to do. Whenever you start pinpointing things that happened in your life, and identify the key people as well in your life. It's important as well, that are around you and have influenced different phases of your life. And you quite easily identify the different seasons in your life and how you go through it. So when you start to write your memoir through these stories, where do you start? You just start. You start from, maybe some people start from where they are now and say, this is where I am and this is how I got there. So give an introduction, a little brief introduction to where they are now, and then go back in thoughts to where they were. Or they start with the earliest memory and start from there. One of the things when writing your memoir, it is, yes, be mindful if you're writing it for an audience, for a readership, but also remember you're going to write more than what's needed for the reader. write it out. Even if you think, don't overthink it, just write it out. And I'm going to share with you a little scenario about how I wrote my first book and how there was no blocks and how it was just so free flowing. And I hope that you can learn a few tips from this process, because it is so freeing and it allows it just to flow out of you. And then, because your first draft is your first draft and it's meant to be that. It's not meant to be the perfect final cut book, okay? But it's the most important part of the process of writing your story and publishing your story, because when you get it out onto paper, then you can work with it. If you don't go through the process of getting it out, there's nothing to work with. You can't work with an empty page. Okay, so when I wrote my first book, The Visitor, yes, it's a fictional novel, but my story is woven into it. And I had an epiphany and then a call to write. And I decided to embark on a challenge called Nanowrimo. So that's Novel Writing Month. And it happens every November. Okay. So you sign up for Nanowrimo and you dedicate to writing 50,000 words in that month, and you can get a certificate and everything. Okay. So without too much expectation on myself, I made the choice to try this, just try it, and nothing to lose. So the plan was to write 1,667 words a day for 30 days, and then I would have a 50,000 word novel. So I had already been writing those little blogs around 750 words. So I thought, let's just double that and see where I go. So I could do those quite free-flowingly. So with 2 days to go, I said to my husband, hello, dear, you're not going to have a wife for 30 days. The kids will be fine. I'll watch out for them. But, I need 30 days to see if I can do this and make this happen. And so I did. I embarked. So I wrote down 20 potential chapters. I had like a pie graph with the visitor written in the middle and all these little bubbles coming out of it of potential characters and things like that. But I kind of based them on people I knew. But if you're writing your memoir, then you're going to have to use actual real people. But I always suggest and recommend, no matter whether they give permission or not, change their names. It saves a lot of hassle in the long run. Just change their names, because it doesn't matter to the reader what their name is, okay? So, but in the purpose of writing it, you can just write their actual names, okay? So then I wrote down the 20 potential chapters. That is all the and I had the epiphany of what it was going to, the essence of it, what it was going to be. But I did not know how it would all come out. So I wrote The Visitor. It's not a literary novel, but it's a novel that had to be. And it ended, and for 30 days, I wrote 1,667 words a day. I was consistent. That's one of the things. I was consistent. I was dedicated. I just went with it. I didn't have any blocks. I didn't overthink. I just wrote the next page. I did not know what was going to happen on the next scene or whatever. I just went with it and let that story get told. There was no blocks. And so that was a huge thing that I can gift to you, this huge lesson that I learned and discovered on my journey of writing my story, is that to not block yourself, to not overthink, to not even think about it being published. Because whenever I was writing it, publishing it wasn't even an option. It was just that I wanted to write something. And 50,000 words seemed like a lot, but when I broke it down into 1,667 words a day, it was doable. So just get writing. Don't overthink it. Don't let the self-doubt monster come in and say, this is terrible. Da, da, da. It's not, but just know it's a natural process of writing. All of these inhibitions coming up, shoo them away, be gone. I hear you, but I want to do this, and I've set the intention to do this. So I'm going to do it. So just keep writing, write it out. Have your framework, as I say, and try to write onto that, but don't be so rigid, because the 20 chapters that I wrote for The Visitor were not the 20 chapters that ended up being. I went with it. I trusted the process. I opened my heart and I just let those words flood onto the page. And then my editor made them. Whenever it was the challenge was finished, I put it away. I had a few people read it. One woman who had, because there was a miscarriage, was kind of the essence of the book. One woman who read it, said it gave her the answer her heart longed for. And then I knew I had connected with someone. I knew I had changed someone's life for the better. I knew that the message and the epiphany that made me write this book had happened, and it connected with someone. And it was the book I needed to read when I had my double miscarriage, because I never knew why. I needed that reasoning why, and it didn't come from medicine. It was a spiritual reasoning as to why that happened. And then it gave me a greater understanding that resonated with me, one that I could be at peace with. And I wanted to give that to others. And I'm sure you have many lessons in your lifetime that you can give to others. And you are the person that they need to hear them from. So even if it's a family member, I've written pieces, and I've written them because I needed to share them, and I have that, I had the healing in sharing, in writing it down. But when I shared it with, say, my mother, who I thought, oh God, you have to share this with her because this might hurt her feelings, but it didn't. I was trying to protect her feelings. But she needed to read it. She loved that I shared it with her. She loved the insight, and it made us closer. So don't just presume that you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, because you never know until you write it and share it with them. Another one of my authors has written her life story. Now, her story's been tragic. And she always thought the biggest hurdle to publishing it was her mother, because she thought, well, her mother would be so distraught if this went out into the world. But yet her mother ended up being the person who helped her, shaped it, who worked with her to make it the best work it can be. So they just don't underestimate the power of opening up to someone and that deep connection that can happen through that, and the power of the written word. Okay. So I have talked a bit longer than I expected there, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So telling your story. Okay. Let me see. Oh, the intro. We are put on this earth to continually evolve and share our findings with each other, so that others can grow too. This is what I believe with all of my heart. Every story has value for someone else, and telling our story is one of the most important aspects of growth. And down at the bottom there, the little quote is, "This call to share your story is one of the final stages of healing." Did you know that? The call to share your story is one of the final stages of healing. It's a beautiful prospect, and it definitely was the case for me. Okay, so I'm just going to move me up a bit. Tips to sharing your story. So where do you start? That's always the question I get. Where do I start, Karen? And you start to write. You start to let it flow through and see what starts to come out, because then it'll all start to come together in front of your eyes. Don't overthink, just get started, okay? When writing, I talked about this, do your timeline and potential chapters mapped out. That gives you this subconscious safety mat, if so to speak, so that you know that there's something there to go and reflect back on, and like a resource for you to go to keep you moving forward. So it's always a good idea. If you want to prep, that's really good prepping. Tell your story as if you were sharing it with your best friend. And I said that because in this day and age, people want you to show up as your authentic self. Okay. I know I could never hide behind any mask. What you're seeing here is me. You probably hear my kids in the background. They're playing away. But that is how I roll. You're going to see me as my authentic self in life. I'm not going to hide behind any mask, because why? Then you're not being authentic. You're not having your best experience of life. Okay. So be prepared for unexpected emotions to resurface. This is an opportunity to release them once and for all. Now, this is one of the most important things you need to be mindful of when telling your story. And I'm going to emphasize that again. This is one of the most important things to realize, to be mindful of when telling your story. And the reason is this. When you set out on the quest to tell your story or write something, emotions that you thought were gone, or that were maybe emotions you had not dealt with, because when we go through a trauma, when we go through something we don't like in life, at the time we're going through it is not the time to heal from it. So we bury it down. Survival mechanism comes into place, and we hide it away until it's time to release it. Now, many people do not stop in their lifetime to go through the uncomfortable process of releasing it into the world, freeing themselves of that, which is such a tragedy, because if only you knew the power of releasing it. And telling your story is one of the ways to release it into the world, honoring it and sharing it with the world. Okay? So you need to honor what needs to come out. It doesn't need to make the final cut. And know that everyone has a story to share, and you need to commit to the process. Okay? So when you choose to tell your story, okay, it's deep down within you. If there's emotions that come to the surface, write them out, release them from it. It's not a matter of burying them back down again. Feel the uncomfortableness, feel it, honor it, and release it, and you will be free of it. And wait till you see how free and how open you start to feel. It's going to be one of the most amazing things that you do in your lifetime. So here's some tips on how to write your story. The preparation, the allocating of time, write, stay committed, and complete, rest, and revise. So we'll not go through each single point on this. And that's just a little bit about me. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I hope that my tips and my story has maybe ignited something within you to share your story, because as our stories are a gift to the world. Our stories, when they connect with another person, are very powerful. Our stories will change the world, will connect us back together again. And the lessons we learn in life, when we share them with other people, it helps them to find their way through as well, without falling too far into the darkness. So guys, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Maria and the team for an intro. I'm happy to help, because quite often the story is a very personable thing. And if you need to get going on it, I'm happy to for you to reach out. No problem. Have a little call. Okay, guys, thank you for watching, and thank you to Maria and the team for inviting me. Bye.